Okay, yep, you can start within the next few seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to our February Cabinet meeting, to those that are in the chamber, but also to colleagues that may have joined remotely, and obviously residents that are watching at home. The meeting is being live streamed, so please do recognise that. Please also bear with me with my cough and throat. It's not the best thing to be chairing a meeting. Clearly, colleagues that are joining remotely know that they are not formally counted as being present in the meeting. While they can participate in the meeting, they can't vote on any of the items under discussion this evening. Obviously, all of the decisions that we're taking tonight will be published after the meeting on the Council's website. I did just want to say that while it's obviously good to be back in the chamber, it's a busy civic week this week for Hackney Council. The items that we're discussing, including the budget, some of which will go forward for Council on Wednesday for Council decision. I did just want to recognise, though, and we may not be able to touch on all of this in full on Wednesday, that it's been an incredibly difficult time for many people in our communities, and to recognise the 1-year anniversary of the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine that we recognised on Friday. Clearly, it has had a devastating impact on Ukraine, on our economy, on many parts of the world, and it continues to have that impact on so many people. But I do want to recognise that I'm very proud of the work that our Homes for Ukraine team do across the council. They've welcomed over 300 refugees to join us here in Hackney. We're continuing to commit to support all of those, and I met with some of the team 2 weeks ago that do this incredibly important work. It's hard to just recognise the amount of trauma that people are dealing with when working with those families and hosts. I'd also like to pay tribute to Deputy Mayor Bramble, Councillor Williams and Councillor Sizer, who joined some of those Ukrainians that have joined us in Hackney on the Town Hall steps on Friday as part of our broader recognition of the minute's silence, and to say that we will be organising some events to recognise the contribution of both our hosts and those that have joined us in Hackney in the next couple of weeks. And I observed the minute's silence remotely. I'd also like to stand with Hackney's Turkish and Kurdish and Syrian communities following the catastrophic earthquake in Turkey and Syria only 2 weeks ago. We know that many of our residents, businesses, voluntary and community organisations will still be anxious for family and friends in the region, and that so many were devastated by the impact of the disaster. And I know from talking to residents and staff and community organisations just how much trauma that has been caused and continues to be for residents in Hackney. And I've done it on previous occasions, but just to offer my condolences on behalf of the whole council. We've been continuing to promote internally and externally the many community organisations in Hackney that responded to this crisis. And on day one, community organisations, businesses, activists and campaigners were looking at what they could do, whether it was setting up crowdfunders or taking donations and then ensuring that they were sent to the region. It's really clear that most community organisations do not want physical donations anymore and are continuing to emphasise donations online or through those crowdfunders. And this is going to be a long-term impact on the community resilience of organisations in the borough, but also on the region as a whole. And I'd like to thank all of those that rose to that challenge, made their own donations and responded. I'd like to thank the Speaker for organising her own civic response to Cabinet, including the Faith Forum, and ward councillors who have all really dug deep, gone into the community organisations and shown that visible leadership that Hackney is known for. I joined Councillor Coban in visiting community organisations. We also took part in a vigil at Hackney Mosque, and I know Councillor Ette joined us there as well. And that I went to Trafalgar Square to represent the borough at another community vigil. I'd like to thank the Mildmay Club specifically for organising a fundraising event a week ago, and also to highlight this Saturday at St Peter's de Beauvoir. They, through the de Beauvoir Association, are having a concert for Turkey and Syria, and I know that they would welcome attendance and donations. Today, Councillor Williams and I have signed an open letter calling for the government to urgently allow visa extension applications from Turkish and Syrian nationals to be granted on compassionate grounds, and for those that visas are going to expire. Clearly, there is a precedent for offering family reunion when it comes to Ukraine crisis. And I know that many residents believe in Hackney that they have the opportunity to offer family and friends safe haven that is simply not on offer in the region, and are ready to do so if the right visa regime was implemented. I know that this is an effort that is joined by many North East London MPs, community organisations and local councils. So I'm very pleased to have been a part of that, and I know some of this has already been debated in Parliament. I too signed the petition that has been set up on the Parliament website as well for the Turkish family scheme. We will continue to look to how we can support our community organisations, and I'd like to thank HCVS for their work in convening discussions alongside the Council's policy and strategy team for looking at the community impact here in the borough and what more we can do to help. And I know a significant element of that is mental health support, not just in our schools when Councillor Bramble and I wrote to them, but also thinking about that broader trauma-informed approach. And I know that organisations like Derman and others will be playing a part of that as we move through the weeks and months ahead. Lastly, I want to express our heartbreak at the tragic circumstances which cut short the life of a bright and talented young woman, Brianna Gay. I'm deeply grateful for Hackney CVS for arranging a vigil last week on honouring Brianna's life and memory. I couldn't attend it myself, but I know it was deeply moving from those that did attend. Over the weekend beforehand, I joined the moving vigil in Soho, standing not just in solidarity with our trans and non-binary community, but all those who stand up against hatred. I believe it is the responsibility of all of us working at the council that we as an institution create a place of belonging for all of our staff and residents, and pay particular tribute to the work of the Proud Network, which is a staff network representing LGBTQI+ staff members. They also, on a more happier note, played an intrinsic role in the borough organising and hosting Para Pride a week last Sunday, which showed that we can also come together around celebration, not just memorial. And I look forward to the discussions of the solidarity motion at full council on Wednesday. Thanks very much for everyone joining us this evening, and we'll move into the formal part of the agenda. In terms of apologies for absence, I've not received any apologies. So Councillor Williams is online remotely with Councillor Ette and Councillor Marima. So they are present in that sense, but not able to vote. On urgent items of business, I think there are none, unless there's no urgent items of business. Are there any additional declarations of interest that are not already recorded by members that relate to agenda items on the agenda? No, thank you. There's been no notice to conduct any other business in private. And there's been no questions and deputations. There was a question from an opposition lead member, but we're going to either address that full council or meetings later this week, but they're not here this evening. In terms of the unrestricted minutes of the previous meeting on the 23rd of January, are we happy to agree them? Agreed. Thank you. So we are restoring the minutes of the Cabinet Procurement and Insourcing Committee to the meeting. I don't know if Councillor Chapman, you just want to introduce them and pick out any highlights, or are we safe in just agreeing them? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased that we're getting back into the tradition of having an update to Cabinet of the work of the CPIC, which, as we all know, is, well, I would say this, but it does a really important job in making sure that we get value for money for our residents, as well as overseeing the implementation of our sustainable procurement and insourcing policies. In particular, I could just draw your attention to the Mental Health Network contract that we awarded, which is actually, obviously a really important service for the people of the borough. But I'll just point out that it's been implemented largely using voluntary organisations, and the skills and expertise and knowledge that's in Hackney in delivering this service, and it's a good example of our sustainable procurement policy in action. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks so much, Councillor Chapman. And obviously, we're likely to be part of the ongoing response that we were talking about earlier on. Are we happy to agree the minutes? Thank you. Noted. Yeah, noted. Good. So item 8 is the capital update, property disposals and acquisitions report. I'll introduce it. I did just want to highlight the continued investment in our cyber recovery when it comes to the Mosaic system for adults. Also, there are some key significant infrastructure loose ends around the development of the 2 GP surgeries, and highlight the continued investment in our parks infrastructure around toilets and cafes, which any of you who have seen either Councillor Woodley or my own social media in the last couple of weeks will know we're incredibly passionate about. Beyond that, I didn't have anything else I was going to highlight. Are we happy to agree the report? Agreed. Thanks so much. So, Councillor Chapman, the OFP.
Just to report that we are still showing an overspend this year of around 8 million, and although that's just got marginally worse from last time, I think actually, given the extreme pressures the council's been under this year, both in terms of cost of living prices on our residents and the way that inflation has affected our budget, really that's a really solid performance from my colleagues and chief officers and managers to maintain that. And obviously it demonstrates the pressures that we continue to be under, and I'll just stress the importance of keeping attention to making sure that budgets stay within set limits, and they're kept well under control in future. Thank you. The rest of it as set out.
Thanks very much, Councillor Chapman. I also just wanted to thank all the office team involved in preparing this report alongside the budget this evening, and the work on the mental health and wellbeing network that you highlighted earlier on. I know that's been a long-term important piece of work. Are we happy to agree the report? Agree. Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Gives me a chance to cough. Very welcome.
That's all right, Chair. I'm not sure which one of us are crow-curious, but just to say that despite Councillor Chapman mentioning the cost pressures, I'm really proud that despite that, we're still investing in schemes and financial support packages for our residents, including children and families. And I think that's really important to highlight. I want to thank you and the team for all the work that you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are we happy to agree the OFP? Agreed, thank you. So the biggest item on the agenda is the budget and council tax report, but I'm going to save all of my words and voice for Wednesday evening. So as set out, colleagues, are we happy to agree the report for full council's final adoption? I know it will be by recorded vote, so I will hand over to our team to my right.
Cabinet members, I'll call your name in alphabetical order. If you can say for, against, or abstain. Deputy Mayor Bramble. For. Councillor Chapman. For. Councillor Caban. For. Councillor Fajana Thomas. For. Mayor Glanville.
For.
Councillor Kennedy. For. Councillor Mackenzie. For. Councillor Nicholson. For. Councillor Woodley. For. Thank you.
Thanks very much, carried, and look forward to the discussions at full council on the budget on Wednesday, when hopefully all of us will be able to contribute perhaps more than we were able to this evening. Again, though, huge thank you, Ian, and everyone else in the teams for the work on the budget. And I know the work isn't yet done, given the other political groups' work later this week. So thanks again for all of that, and for Councillor Chapman's work as well with colleagues. Item 11, which is equally important, is the HRA account, including the tenants' rents and service charge setting. Over to you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend a few minutes to go through this report. Sadly, I'm presenting this budget proposal in the midst of a housing cost of living crisis. Inflation has reached levels higher than most of our residents would have endured in a lifetime, which is having a real impact on the living standards, driving some of our tenants into poverty. A good, secure council home will remain an important part as the council rebuilds from the pandemic and responds to the cost of living crisis. We are facing significant inflation pressures to deliver our operational responsibilities and strategic priorities, from repairs and maintenance, building safety and decarbonisation. The cost of living crisis is not only affecting our residents, but is also impacting the cost of services we deliver. The pay award is significantly above what was planned. Non-pay inflation, especially relating to repairs, is in excess of 10%. Gas inflation over 180%, and electricity inflation is running over 50%. These budget proposals are presented with a very heavy heart, and also recognising our obligation to set a balanced budget for the housing revenue account to ensure it remains financially viable over the long term. We are proposing a below inflation rent increase of 7% for 23-24. This is in line with the rent cap announced by the government in November last year. This increase will mean an average rent will increase from £115.12 to another increase of £7.53 per week. Our rents still remain amongst the lowest in London and compare favourably with rents charged in the borough for housing associations, which is on average £140 per week. Those which are being charged in the private sector is running at £641 per week. We also recognise that residents in shared ownership properties are facing significant difficulties during the cost of living crisis, and also propose a cap of shared ownership rents at 7% for 23-24. For most service charges, we are proposing an increase of 7% to recover the inflationary cost pressures. The exceptions to this are charges for conduits, landlord and lighting service charges, and communal heating, which have increased to reflect the specific cost of increase for these services. For communal heating, the setting of the charges will follow once the final energy contract prices are known. As a part of the budget setting process, we've invited comments from our tenants on the proposed rent increases, and in mid-January, we distributed a rent leaflet to all tenants. Over 20,000 have received and commented from 49 tenants. The overwhelming response was against the rent increases because of the increase in bills that they are facing and concern around the affordability of the rent increase. This response from our tenants is understandable. The challenges facing the HRA are stark. We can only fund council services from council rents and service charges. There is no government support to provide housing services. We have a duty to our residents to provide good housing services and safe housing. We recognise that our residents are facing hardship through the cost of living crisis. Whilst those tenants are in receipt of housing benefit are protected from the proposed rent increase, we will continue to support all of our tenants. We will continue to invest in our financial inclusion team, who work closely with some of our most vulnerable resident tenants, and support them to not only pay their rent, but access the appropriate benefits and help with general budgeting. We've also, through our community grants, work a number of organisations to support warm hubs, where residents can go if they cannot heat their homes. And we have developed a cost of living booklet, which gives many good ideas how to manage the impact of the cost of living crisis. As a part of the budget proposals, we still had to make 14.2 million savings and have to make some difficult decisions regarding savings in order to balance our budget. These savings, for most part, protect housing services, but will reduce the resources we have to invest in our housing stock for the next year. This budget, despite all the difficult decisions, still enables us to maintain our core housing services, invest in our responsive repair service, invest in maintenance of our homes, and to ensure financial sustainability of the HRA. We are providing additional resources of 4.8 million for responsive repairs, including the expansion of the DLO and tackling damp and mould, invest in our service transformation and fund capital improvements to the tune of £51 million. This council is passionate about council housing and is committed to the aims and principles of council housing for our residents. But unfortunately, there are many pressures on our housing finances, especially rising from the increased costs of the exceptional inflation rates, especially utilities, costs of supplies, materials and maintenance, and costs of employing staff. This is a one-year budget to enable us to spend time to engage with residents, develop service transformation savings, and replenish the resources to maintain and to improve our ageing and diverse housing stock. Most importantly of all, to provide the essential resources to keep our residents safe in their homes. In concluding, Mayor Glanville, I believe this report represents a balanced and responsible budget that allows us to invest in our repairs service, including maintaining the expansion of our DLO workforce, respond to damp and mould issues in our housing stock, maintain our core housing services offer, invest in service improvements, and set a capital programme of £51 million to invest in the housing stock. I commend this report to Cabinet.
Thank you so much, Councillor Mackenzie. As you set out, a very difficult time for the housing revenue account, but we're doing all we can in Hackney to maximise its use for the benefit of residents. The point about having some of the lowest rents in London, I think, is really important to make, and especially in comparison as well, even within Hackney, to housing association rents and obviously the private rented sector, which is so unaffordable for most. It is remarkable that we're able to achieve what you've set out. I did also want to highlight some things that you've announced recently, including the 24-hour leaks response, the 5-day commitment to damp and mould, and the restoration of the online repair portal. I think all three of those things are incredibly important for our residents. And particular thanks for the role that the HRA and the HRA officers and budgets have played in our cost of living response, not just the support booklet, but the support for community organisations and indeed the warm hubs, as you've highlighted, shows the housing services contributing a huge amount to the council's wider response. So a big tribute to you and the team for drawing up the budget that's been proposed this evening. Do members want to debate the report? No. Are we happy to agree it? Thanks very much indeed. And it was worth spending time on that item because it only kind of becomes part of an appendices of the main budget on Wednesday rather than being debated in its own right. I know there's still a lot of work to do though to deliver the programme set out, and thank you very much for your leadership on that. Over to Deputy Mayor Nicholson and the Local Plan Development Scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Glenville. And by way of a brief introduction, this is just to remind member colleagues and all of those who may be joining us on the meeting this evening that the local development scheme is basically a plan and policy making timetable for the planning authority itself. So it's looking at planning policy, everything from how residents and the policy that we follow as a council and as to how residents can engage with the planning service. For example, responding to planning applications and commenting on them, right the way through to area-based plans in our particular borough. So that would include things like Stamford Hill, for example, the Stamford Hill area plan, the Shoreditch area plan, the Dalston plan, Hackney Central, the list goes on. Chair, the proposal is that we take forward a very, very wide range of plan and policy making over the course of the next 3 to 4 years. It captures very much the spirit and the essence of the manifesto that you led on the election in May of last year. And it picks up on a very wide range of commitments that range and include everything from community infrastructure levy and the return through to the community, through planning gain and the investment that that can unlock, right the way through to some of our more wider ambitions around net zero and creating a net zero borough, and on through to, I mentioned the area plans, but to give it more substance and more depth. At the moment, the government are consulting on reform of the planning system, as they may describe it. We have a great deal of concern that actually what that actually means is that there will be less democracy within the planning system itself. There would be less opportunities to shape and form local policy that addresses local needs. And instead, this would be imposed centrally, imposed by central government. Suffice it to say that embedded within this timetable, this plan and policy making timetable, are responses to that to make sure that actually we do have the evidence base in place, that we do go beyond any future kind of any future thresholds that may be placed by government at a national level, and that locally we insist and continue with that local objective around local engagement, local input, local determination of the development that comes forward in our borough. It is an extensive local development scheme. It is resourced, it's costed. The planning service itself has been very diligent in ensuring that actually it can deliver this over this programme over the coming months and years. And it is, Mayor Glanville, as set out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Just the scale of the work, to pay tribute to the planning team and yourself about resourcing that political ambition, but also placing community and town centres at the heart of how we manage and deliver growth in the borough. So often, I think people think that we are just in favour of one type of growth, or that the planning system can't be shaped. I think what we see in Hackney is a real commitment to place, and it comes across, like I think the phrase stick of rock is the one we're using all day today, but that strength of community and town centre through planning policy, through Shoreditch, Stamford Hill and the local plan review, but also how it accompanies those community-based conversations that we've had in Dalston, Hackney Central, but extending them on out into Clapton, Homerton and some of those key development sites is incredibly important to ensuring that we have the policy that's needed to shape those places and our commitment to those places within obviously the broader LP 33. So as a work programme, it's substantial, as you've indicated, but I think as a set of strategic intentions and then that work around net zero is equally important, and protecting our employment spaces. So from me, thank you. Does members want to debate or comment on the report? Thank you. Are we happy to agree? Agreed. I think that brings us to a close, if I've got that right. So there are no items of unrestricted urgent business. We don't need to exclude the press, and there's no exempt items of business. So I thought I was going to make it to the end. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope we will all be in better shape by Wednesday and close the meeting. Thank you.